Welcome, everyone, to the Eugene City Council meeting for July 11th. Welcome to everyone here and everyone at home. This evening, our first item up is to commemorate Independence Day on July 4th. I'm honored to welcome Linda Lynch, President of the League of Women Voters of Lane County, and her family members, who will read the Declaration of Independence and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Linda recently attended the National Convention in Washington, D.C. for the League of Women Voters of the United States. Joining Linda, and they'll all come up here, are her niece, Darla McVeigh, and her two children, Connor McVeigh and Carson McVeigh, who were both students at South Eugene High School. Welcome.
Might as well. Did I just go?
Just begin.
All right. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government.
The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them.
He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people.
He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasions from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands.
He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures.
He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses,
for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries, so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us all in cases whatsoever.
He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation.
He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring down on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every state of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind. Enemies in war, in peace, friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved. And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Thank you very much. And now would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You did a great job of reading that very long piece. Thank you very much. Okay, next ceremonial matter is one that I am going to very much enjoy doing. This is a recognition of Colt Gill. As many of you know, Colt Gill was recently appointed by Governor Kate Brown as Oregon's first Education Innovation Officer after serving as the superintendent of the Bethel School District for a decade. While our efforts to honor him here tonight can only touch the surface of his countless contributions and the level of our gratitude, we want to formally and publicly recognize and thank him on behalf of the entire community. Colt, would you please come up to the speaker's podium? We'll see how much we can embarrass you.
She's good at it, by the way.
I know.
Practice.
So it's my honor to present Colt with his signed testimonial, which reads as follows. Dear Colt, as we congratulate you on your appointment as Oregon's Education Innovation Officer, it is the wish of the Eugene City Council to recognize your accomplishments during the decade you have served as superintendent of the Bethel School District and to express appreciation for your exemplary leadership and service to the district and the community. Looking back over the last 10 years, we are amazed by the number and depth of projects you have undertaken and which are already flourishing for our community. Creation of Bethel Education Foundation, championing early learning through the Kids in Transition to School Kits program, helping the Bethel community pass a bond, which has brought about the replacement of 2 elementary schools and a new science wing for Willamette High School. And I just want to interject in here, although it won't be written there, but I will say it, is that I thought that was one of those wonderful collaborations that Colt is so well known for. He came over and sat down at a table and said, how can we learn from the people who work for the city about how to do these buildings in a more green way? And then took that and worked in partnership and really produced something wonderful for their community. Creation and implementation of Bethel's school-based health center and moving the work of equity within the district, and implementing a vision to ensure that all students graduate from high school prepared to continue their education or enter the workforce. Most impressively, the Bethel School District has seen significant improvements of graduation rates for minority and underserved populations. Whether discussing your merits as an educator or a leader, students are always at the center of your work. You have immersed yourself in the Bethel community, knowing the critical role that community plays in supporting students' academic achievement. I'll interject one more thing because I loved it. This was at the beginning of school, where he always does a wonderful welcome to school to all the teachers and students that go every year. And you know, many of you are familiar with that picture of 3 kids, 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 short, and only the tall one can see over the fence. The second picture is they put a little box under all 3 of them, so they are all at the same level looking over the fence. And we used to be satisfied with that. And then what Colt introduced the last time, which I appreciated so much, was they took away the boxes and they removed the fence. Your outreach and tireless advocacy have made a difference for Bethel students and our community. You are recognized as an innovative, resourceful, inspiring, and inclusive leader who relentlessly searches for creative improvements to the educational system for the benefits of students. We thank you for your partnership with us, and our whole community has benefited. We thank you for all you have done for our community and all you will continue to do in your new role, and wish you a long and successful career. With deepest gratitude. Thank you, Colt.
Yes, of course. I'm going to take a picture. Nobody else is going to take. I will. We're right here.
Beth usually does.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you again, everybody. All right, on we go. Public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. We have 8 people signed up. First up is Otto Patisha, followed by Eric Hall.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Otto Patisha, 1820 Kona Street, Eugene, Oregon, the Zelenka Ward. I came to speak about the City Hall and the opportunities that exist within it. I've offered for your review a new and very workable strategy for what would be called our Consolidated City-County Government Center. It suggests that placing the first phase of the City Hall at the north end of the Butterfly Lot site and the second phase, the City Services Building, in the recycled and renovated current Lane County Courthouse building. This plan needs some very serious consideration, since in the past 2 years of City Hall planning, there have been many important changes that have occurred. The city's approval of the extension of the urban renewal and the listing of projects to be considered in the urban renewal district. The community's support for the farmers market. The park blocks rehabilitation and improvements, especially before 2021. The inclusion of the former City Hall site within the renewal district boundary. The demolition of the former City Hall structure and making the site immediately usable for temporary and long-term uses. The proposed new first phase City Hall that is significantly over budget and a vision without strategy for funding to achieve the second phase, the city's services building. The planning and programming study for a new 250,000 square foot county courthouse building. The interest and opportunity to partner with the county to plan and develop a consolidated and connected city-county government complex. These are all things that have changed within the last 2 years. And they're significant. Considering these changes, it's politically and physically prudent to put to rest the current planning and development for Phase 1 portion of City Hall until a thorough study has been made to examine, solve, and find solutions that take advantage of these new opportunities. Examining the Butterfly parking lot site and examining what city uses could be accommodated in what might become a discarded existing courthouse building is the nexus of this strategy. That building, when renovated, is the program size for the second phase City Services Building and could be completed at a projected cost savings of $30 to $40 million and very achievable. Architecturally, the Butterfly site sits within an already built context, which eliminates future unknowns, and based on its location and its neighbors, would naturally and more easily be used and benefit more to the community. Experience says that this strategy is working together to achieve an integrated facility, improve the park blocks, and downtown. Will make the state funding for the new courthouse much easier to obtain when a project goes for grants and it solves more than just one problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Hall is next, followed by Charmaine Bragg.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I've been in front of this body many times now over the last 4 years regarding the City Hall project. And during that time, my thoughts have been consistent with regard to the complexity of the problem in front of you, as well as the great opportunities, I think, that exist for success if a broader palette of options were to be considered. What strikes me most about the presentation that you've just heard from Otto and the discussion surrounding that is the synergy of a multiplicity of stakeholders. The notion of working together with the county, the courts, the farmers market, and others to develop a really integrated solution seems like the necessary ingredients these days of scarce public dollars. And that would be a very green solution in that its reuse and repurposing allows the recapture of existing energies previously invested in buildings that already exist. However, the scheme is not without criticism, and the main one being that it's complicated. has lots of moving parts and potential for derailment at all points along that path. So I wanted to spend what remains of my time to discuss briefly the handout that I've prepared that accompanies the autos that lays out a first guess at what that process might look like. And what it really, at the end of the day, involves is shelving the current project and applying all of your forces in conjunction with the county to get their funding in place to do this new facility. With that in hand, I believe that many other options will present themselves. The schedule clearly includes in the first year, developing that agreement to exchange the now sadly vacant City Hall site to the county in trade for the butterfly lot and the eventual ownership of the current county building. That is going to be vacant and really a white elephant as far as the county is concerned once they build a new facility and move out of that. And I don't believe they really have a plan for it. You could be part of that plan. You've got a whole host of folks that have been relocated to encourage other projects throughout the city of Eugene whose leases are coming up. And they're going to need a place to go, or they're going to continue to be a cost to the city as an ongoing cost. You can read through the schedule, I think, for yourself. We think that we've allowed ample time. We also note that there's the whole world coming to Eugene here. It would be wonderful if we had all of these pieces in play. You've spoken about an aggressive sort of time frame to move things forward.
Thank you.
I hope that happens.
Next up is Charmaine Rigg. And Patty Hine after her. Charmaine?
Hello, my name's Charmaine Rigg. I live in Eugene. And I hope you guys listen to these two guys, because the whole City Hall thing is just an ongoing fiasco. I've only been in Eugene for a year. I was over in Springfield before that, 3.5. So I've been in Oregon 4.5. But to have it start at $12 million and then to just shine on the consultant and have it go up to 15, and then for the city manager to sneak in earthquake improvements and not let any of you guys know it, which was so wrong. Trump would call him the scammer. And then now you have construction people who are no longer in the midst of a recession who think, well, let's just bilk the taxpayer for more. And I thought it was up to 27.5, and I find out at your last meeting here it's like up to 28. Now, who's supposed to pay for that? That is the equivalent of somebody having a certain amount of money, going in to buy a simple little sedan, and by the time the salespeople get done with them, he's being talked into a $50,000 sports car. Well, I don't want to pick up that tab. So you need to just step back and, like I said, maybe listen to these two guys' presentation, because it's wrong. You have to stay in a budget, because the taxpayers don't have an infinite amount of resources to keep throwing into this. It's wrong otherwise. Thanks.
Patty Hine is next, followed by Coriel Rede White.
Good evening, Mayor Piercy and city councilors and city manager. My name is Patty Hine. I live in the county, but Eugene is my community and city. On behalf of 350 Eugene, a climate club, we would like to really express our appreciation for your action last council meeting work session regarding the Climate Recovery Ordinance, the nation's first and only science-based city ordinance for getting our greenhouse gases down to 350 parts per million. We are eager and excited to come to the near-term targets and benchmarks that we think we will have in the next iteration, and so we can achieve carbon neutrality for our city operations within 4 years, and 50% reduction in community-wide fossil fuel use by 2030. And of course, we're pleased and very proud of the goal for our community by 2100, seems so far away, to do our very own share of bringing our carbon emissions down for the world to 350 parts per million, the healthy level of CO2 in the atmosphere. We surely must do this, we know. We can do this, we know. And we're looking forward to doing it with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Coriel Redé-White is next, followed by Lori Powell.
Thank you, Mayor Piercy. Good evening, City Council. Last meeting, you unanimously asked the City Manager to return next meeting with a community-wide CRO implementation plan and proposed language to amend the CRO to reflect science-based emission reduction targets. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Acting unanimously sent a signal to city staff and city residents alike. When in harmony, your voice, your call is clearest. We'll be here in 2 weeks to respond to your call. At next meeting's public hearing, you'll have our support in codifying your voice, which is, of course, our voice. We encourage you to, again, act unanimously. A unanimous yes vote at the July 25th meeting will project Council's strongest climate signal yet. It would let everyone know that Eugene as a community will do its share to restore health to our atmosphere, and we'll do it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Powell is next, followed by Moshe Emmerman.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Lori Powell. I live in Ward 1, and I'm a member of 350 Eugene. So here we are on a beautiful summer day in Eugene. We indeed live in a paradise. However, the U.S. experienced its warmest ever June last month, and worldwide heat records have been broken for 13 months in a row, so we can't be insular here. It's a not-so-subtle reminder of the ever-growing climate crisis. We are so grateful to the Council for its unanimous vote on June 27th, asking the City Manager's Office to prepare modifications to the Climate Recovery Ordinance, including the adoption of near-term targets and benchmarks, and establishing a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions level that is science-based and equivalent to 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We look forward to the public hearing on July 25th and a unanimous council vote on these modifications to the CRO. We have no time to lose. Thank you.
Thank you. Moshe Emmerman is next, followed by A.W. Scott Bartlett.
So good evening, friends. Hope you're all staying fresh and crystal clear inside and doing whatever it takes to stay fresh and new every day, every morning. City Hall. What we need is
Moshe, introduce yourself.
Moshe Emmerman, Eugene, Oregon.
Thank you.
And I'm at 541-954-9128. I welcome calls. What we need is an epidemic of understanding. What we need is an epidemic of understanding. You're all diligent and dedicated. But around the City Hall, well, Eric Hall said wisely, we need to expand our color palette. Yeah, that's right. This is a place of great cultural creativity, and for some reason, we're suppressing it in some ways around the City Hall. I celebrate and thank our excellent city manager for introducing seismic upgrades. I used to teach geology when I was a park ranger in different national parks and on Mount Hood. There's a 37% likelihood for a Richter 9 or above event in the next 50 years. Come on, let's get real. Let's stop being ostriches. I've asked all of us, particularly City Council, City Manager, Mayor, to please call Yumi, the geotechnical civil engineer at the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. I talked to her this afternoon. No one's called this blessed, amazing lady. Her phone number, once again, excuse me. Oh, it's not showing up in my system. I also spoke to William, a brilliant, loving geophysicist at the USGS in Menlo Park. What are we waiting for? I say let's call in blessed Congressman Peter DeFazio, say we want federal funding to have a visionary, state-of-the-art, advanced continuity of government city hall that floats like a boat, self-writes, looks at soil liquefaction, does other kinds of things. We should pull in federal funds. For a small fraction of the cost of an F-18 or F-22, we can have a major advancement. Let's call in our 2 senators and our various congresspersons to do it. There's other realities. The staff in a new city hall will feel loved and respected if we focus on their safety. In a big earthquake, the government will be partially or more decapitated. We shouldn't do that. We say, we want you to survive and have peace so you can help us be well. New studies came out 2 weeks ago saying 20,000 people would be homeless immediately in a big earthquake. We deserve better. We need to prepare. Think of Christchurch, New Zealand. They lost 1,800 buildings in their subduction zone quake. You think we're going to do better? Let's say we can afford it. We need to be really visionary and look at what kind of geometries, what kind of design, what kind of seismic safety features we deserve for the next 100 years. Let's do it for the whole region. Let's start a new tradition.
Scott Bartlett is up next. Final one.
Madam Chair and honorable council members, my name is Scott Bartlett. I live in Councilor Zelenka's ward, and I'm not here to suggest any specific thing. I haven't been that focused on it. I've been following this. I followed it several years ago, and I must say, just nostalgically, I'm probably the oldest person now in this room, which is kind of, well, sobering to me. I came here in 1965 at age 20. And at that time, and only a few years thereafter, urban renewal started, and 120 buildings were demolished. And most of the empty spaces were left there lying fallow for a long time, or parking buildings. We didn't have some unifying, visionary public advisory body to say, was this really a smart thing to do? Should we have taken the money, or could we repurpose those buildings? And you look at the electric station, you look at the shed, you look at the Smead, and you see, God, you know. And I remember going down there to Archie Weinstein's place and to Snappy Service and to the movie theaters and the Odyssey Coffee House. And those things could have been marvelously. Apparently there were retail on the bottom and residential on the top. Well, it's water over the dam, so to speak. And then we had Jerry Detelm and Charlie Porter and other people in the 70s propose the Emerald Canal, which would have made San Antonio look like a dry gulch. Would have been an incredible thing with esplanades from the mill race to the fairgrounds. That was passed up. And then you've had some of the creative minds here that said, try to repurpose the old City Hall. I liked the old City Hall. And apparently it could have been rehabbed for $16 million, according to Turner Construction, including going up a few things. It would be on the north side, a few levels. I think we citizens would at least like to have an honest and factual understanding of why that was precipitously torn down. But here we are now, and I think the council should obey the law of holes. And that is, when we're in a hole, stop digging and start thinking for a while. And before the county and you work out some premature deal, really think about it. I like the idea of a one-stop shop for the city. I like the idea of a unique circular city council chambers. I actually liked that building. If it had flaws and had to go, at least prove it to us or tell us this, because I don't think I'm alone in saying, why was that done that way? It's moot now, and you can create the future, but take your time doing it. Please don't just rush in with the county. And their idea to take 3/4 of that lot, to me, is hideous. And I was the chairman of the budget committee and on the county budget committee for 16 years. They gave that huge block to Brian Obey. They gave what was Umpqua Bank. I told them, don't do this. This is the future. They gave it away.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public forum and ask if there's any comments from City Council. George Poling.
Thank you. Yeah, in reference to the reading of the Declaration of Independence, and some people are going to laugh about this, but Bill O'Reilly, who is a history professor in his original life, wrote a series of books. Starts out with the killing of Jesus, the killing of Kennedy. Most recently, his last book was it's called Legend and Lies. It's about the leaders of our country in the time of independence. It's not a political book. It's his. I've read it. It's like sitting down and listening to a history instructor talking to you, not a history professor talking to a class, but a history instructor sharing his knowledge. And what that book, the impression that book left with me was the people that were involved in the Declaration of Independence and the founding of our country made just major sacrifices in their lives, put their lives on the line, and actually when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they were now declared treasonous by the Great Britain. But if anybody gets the chance to read that book, it really is an excellent interpretation of what these folks read this evening and how it came about. And it's worth the money to buy the book and take the time to read it. And then just a real brief comment to some of the comments that were made about our city manager. I think Councilor Zelinka summed it up in our work session, and I won't try to quote him, but paraphrasing, he basically, Councilor Zelinka, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor, is that everything that the staff did that caused an increase in the budget of the City Hall complex was basically done at the direction of City Council. And to characterize our city manager as sneaking it in and calling it a scam is a disservice to a city manager. Now, granted, John Reese did something wrong. What he did wrong, as far as I'm concerned, is he did not keep us up to date on what was occurring in a timely manner. We'll have that discussion at a later time. But he realizes that now, I'm sure, that it was an error on his part. But the mischaracterization of what occurred, to me, is actually, like I said, is a disservice to our city manager, and I don't appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? So thank you, everyone who came tonight. We appreciate you coming and speaking about City Hall and speaking about the CRO and the work ahead with that. Thank you very much for being here. Next up is council review of the 2016 stormwater user fee increase. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll turn over to Mark Schoening, our city engineer, to start the discussion.
John. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Piercy and members of the City Council. So I'm going to go through, this is your opportunity to review the stormwater user fee increase, and the process that was talked about at your June 8th meeting was increasing stormwater user fees as an administrative process with a public hearing, and it culminates in an administrative order that's signed by the city manager, and that was signed on June 2nd, and that's an attachment to your agenda item summary, and also attached to that is the testimony that we received during that public hearing and the staff responses to it. The process also allows for the City Council to review the rate increases, provided that a majority of the council pass a motion to do so, and that occurred on June 8th. And then after that review, the City Council may affirm, deny, or modify the rate increase. Tonight, the information I intend to provide to the Council is an overview of the stormwater program and what is driving the need for a rate increase, including the regulatory framework, fund transfer of the stormwater services, and the capital improvement program. Then review the fiscal year 16 and fiscal year 17 one-time and ongoing stormwater budget reductions that occurred. Provide a brief review of the overall health of the stormwater fund in the 6-year stormwater fund forecast, and then the options for council action. The first driver for the rate increase is the regulatory requirements, which is a significant aspect of our stormwater program. Under the Federal Clean Water Act, we're both a designated management agency under the Total Maximum Daily Load program, and we're a permit holder under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit program. And that permit is renewed every 5 years, and both those programs, both the NPDES and the TMDL program, are reviewed annually, and we provide annual reports to the Department of Environmental Quality. And so those programs, as we provide those annual reports and those permits are updated, we increase the scope of the stormwater program. We increase some of the studies we do to determine the source and remediation of bacteria in our stormwater system, or how development impacts the flows within our creeks and how we can manage that, or what opportunities there are for stormwater retrofits. We also updated our stormwater development standards, which put a prioritization on green infrastructure, both on private development and on city capital costs or capital improvements. And this was briefly talked about at your June 8th meeting with Councilor Taylor, asked about the stormwater facility at the intersection of 29th and Amazon. So those types of facilities, and we've built them with numerous road projects on Roosevelt Boulevard, on West 18th, and throughout the city. Those are typically built with a combination of stormwater SDCs and stormwater user fees, but then the operation and maintenance of those long-term are funded out of the stormwater user fee cost, or stormwater user fees. And then another federal regulatory program is under the Safe Drinking Water Act, and this has to do with the protection of groundwater in the River Road and Santa Clara areas and parts of Willackenzie. We have a lot of technically, they're called underground injection control systems. They're more commonly known as dry wells, where stormwater is just drains into some type of infiltration trench. And so to protect groundwater under that permit, which is again a 5-year permit with annual reporting to DEQ, we monitor dry wells, and we also have a program to take those offline and replace them with something else. So, for example, a couple years ago, in the River Road Santa Clara, we put in a pipe system, but also a swale in Ferndale Park. So we both had taken care of the drainage and also added a water quality feature, which again increased the maintenance for our stormwater program. And then the final regulatory program is the National Flood Insurance Program, and that's more about protecting homes from flooding, and we regulate the development within the designated floodplain, and it allows developed properties in those areas to participate in the flood insurance program offered by the federal government. The second driver of the rate increase is the fund transfer of stormwater services. And so over the past 10 years, we've transferred over $2.5 million of services into the stormwater fund and the objective was to help manage the stress on our general fund. And primarily those were stormwater services provided by Parks and Open Space, including the street tree program, management of natural areas, vegetation management in maintenance in parks. And then we also had some other programs outside of parks. The remaining portion of the street leaf removal program was moved out of the road fund, riverbank cleanup, and maintenance of green infrastructure and public rights-of-way. And then the final driver of the rate increase is the capital improvement program. So we're in the second of our second 5-year bond measure to maintain or repair streets. And as part of that, we've increased by $500,000 a year the capital improvement program to fix the stormwater system, the pipe system under the streets before we come in and do the pavement rehabilitation, so we're not coming back at a later date and cutting new pavement. The budget actions we did in fiscal year 16 and 17 for the stormwater program. In fiscal year 16, at the midpoint in the year, after the got through the audit of the previous year's expenses, our marginal beginning working capital was significantly less than was budgeted. So we took $300,000 in ongoing programs and reduced that in the stormwater program, and also $900,000 in one-time expenses primarily focused on capital projects and some maintenance contracts. In the development of the fiscal year 17 budget, we took $681,000 reduction in ongoing programs. Part of that was the Stream Corridor Acquisition Program, which was initiated years ago prior to developing the regulatory protections of Stream Corridor. So that program served a purpose, but in light of the stress on the stormwater budget, we decided to forego that program as an ongoing expense. And we also used the balance available in that fund, which is over $1 million over a 4-year period, to mitigate the impact, the budget of the stormwater program. And so we also, of the ongoing expenses, part of that was reviewing vacant positions we have and not filling them and eliminating them. Part of that was reallocating projects that people are working on. So we've had more capital projects, for example, in our engineering division, so people are charging more to capital projects rather than to the dedicated funds. And we're seeing an uptick in permit revenue, so that's covering more of the cost of the land use process. In the 6-year forecast, and this came up, I think, in the last time, the 6-year forecast now we're showing only a 0.2-month operating reserve in the current fiscal year. In the objective and the budget policy is to have a 2-month operating reserve. So 2 months of the stormwater fund is about $2.6 million. So we have about $260,000 in our operating reserve, with the goal of bringing that up over the horizon of the 6-year forecast. And the projection was roughly a 7.5% rate increase in this fiscal year, followed by 4% rate increases in the remaining 5 years of the 6-year forecast, with the idea that we'd monitor that as the years go by, because of the uncertainty as you get in the out years of the 6-year forecast. And so the action requested the council is to affirm the rate increase as adopted in the administrative order. And I think Glenn will explain that process a little bit, and then I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions, comments?
Mayor,
Glenn,
so under the code, the council first needs to give direction as to whether you want to affirm, modify, reject the rate increase, and then the code actually requires you to adopt a written order that has findings and conclusions. So if you give the direction tonight or at a future meeting, we will take that direction, prepare the written order with the findings and conclusions, and bring that back to you, and it would be the adoption of that written order that would be your final action on this. So tonight, if you give direction tonight, it's really direction. It's not the final time you'll be dealing with this.
All right. Councilor Brown?
Yes, I have several questions. And let's see, where the heck are they? Here we go. How much will this bring to the stormwater if we were to approve of the 7.5% rate increase? How much would that? What kind of revenue would the stormwater see?
1% brings $150,000. So I'm going to look at Councilor Lazenka to help me with the math. So it'd be 7.5 times 150,000. So a little over $1 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Brown, will you speak up into your mic, please?
Yeah, okay. I am, is it? Now, that you mentioned on page, let's see, 78, there's talk of the 6-year forecast. And FY17, what year in the 6-year forecast is FY17?
It would be the first year.
That's the first year.
Right.
Okay.
So,
and then
so, we,
because,
so we do a 6-year forecast. It's a rolling 6-year forecast every year.
yeah. And so it's 7.5 increase this year, but then every year for the next 5 years, that's 4% increase. Is that
That's correct.
Okay. And where did the I see here it says that, additional services transferred to the stormwater fund include the remaining portions of the street leaf removal program. Where was that transferred from?
From the road fund.
Road fund and Public Works? Is that part
Right.
of Public Works?
Right.
Okay. All right. And the riverbank cleanup program. Where was that previously to being the responsibility of the
I'm assuming that was probably the general fund.
general fund or not Public Works?
Well, I mean, it's funded within Public Works, but
Yeah.
the general fund
Okay.
is the source of the.
Well, here's my thinking on this. So last year, Public Works, well, actually, it was Parks. Could some of it be coming from Parks?
Well, Parks is part of one of the six divisions in Public Works.
Okay. Well, Parks spent $250,000 last year cleaning up the homeless camps on Amazon Creek and the Willamette River. Is that going to be the riverbank cleanup? I mean, will stormwater funds be used for that?
Yes.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, what I'm seeing here is a transfer of funds that are, previously paid for from Public Works. Let's just take the Downtown Urban Renewal District Amendment. We're transferring money from there, from Public Works, to fix up the streets. But the money's been taken and put in this program. And the new City Hall is going to be funded. We learned on April 11th, one of the suggestions was $4 million from capital improvement programs, even though there was something like only about $3.2 million in the fund as of the budget meetings. So what I'm saying is kind of like we're backfilling on other projects here. In a way, we're taking money from one fund and moving it to another one and justifying. And now all of a sudden we have a 7.5% rate increase to be followed by 5 years of 4% increases. I'll need another round probably.
You have any comments you want to make in response to Councilor
I
Brown?
don't really understand the urban renewal part of that question.
Well, the urban renewal part of it is to increase the borrowing capacity of the city for street improvements on 8th Avenue, right? And but the main thing is, well, let me come back to that one.
Okay.
But the first part is the $2.85 million coming from Public Works for the fourth floor, the empty fourth floor, shelled space of City Hall. So that we deplete that fund. Therefore, they're not able to do the things that they used to do. So therefore, it has to be transferred to the stormwater. You see, like leaf removal. You see the connection.
I'm still trying to, on the fourth floor of the City Hall, the council made a decision to move forward and fund that with certain funds. I think all of them came from Public
They all came
Works.
from
Yeah, all
Public
from
Works.
Public Works on that. And so
Right.
a portion of that, I do believe, was stormwater.
Right.
Portion of that. So there is some dollars, one-time capital dollars in the fourth floor for City Hall. So that is true.
Well, not only that, it diminishes the ability of Public Works to do these other programs that are now being transferred to the stormwater fee.
So I guess in the sense that the money that is being spent on the fourth floor of City Hall is no longer available for some other program. That's correct.
This is
Yeah,
the
that's
point
correct.
there, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. My question is, how much would we save if we quit the leaf pickup program?
The LEAF program.
Got the LEAF program.
I think she said.
Yeah, I don't. It would be substantial. I don't know the exact dollar amount of that. It'd be in the hundreds of thousands, I imagine.
I wonder if that might be equivalent to what we would make from the raise in rates.
I don't think it would be. I think it would be less, but I don't know the exact dollar amount of the LEAF program.
Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka?
So my understanding about the LEAF program is the reason we pick up the leaves is because they clog the storm drains, and if we didn't pick up the leaves, we'd be cleaning out the storm drains and fixing that problem. So it's like if you don't do this, you have to do this, so you don't really save. We once looked at this. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was about equal to what we would have spent, and what we spend on the leaf pickup that we'd spend on the storm system cleaning it up. Is that about right?
Yeah, I don't recall that part of the discussion.
I don't remember exactly either, but so you don't get to save all of it. So if I have this right, from 2012 to 2015, we had a deficit in the stormwater fund, and we used all the reserves. We used reserves to hold down rate increases to the point where now we have reserves that are 0.2 months instead of our overall goal of where our funds are supposed to have 2 months. And then in 2016, we further reduced the budget in the stormwater fund by $330,000.
No, it was significantly more
ongoing, and then another almost $900,000 in one time.
Right.
And so, and then in 2017, we did further changes to reduce the operating budget that were listed in the AIS. And then after doing all of that, you still are at 7.5, followed by 4% over 5 years.
That's correct. That's a good summary.
Even after all of those changes.
That's correct. Yep.
Pretty substantial. All right.
Councilor Brown?
Yeah, I got another question. Can you give us a rate history of increases for, say, the last 5 years?
I think I can.
I think you did. Yeah, you mentioned some of them before at the last time.
So in 15 and 16, they were both 6.5%. Nothing in fiscal year 14, and 4.5% in fiscal year 15 or 13.
Okay. 4.5%.
In 13, fiscal year 13.
What was it for 15 and 16?
6.5%.
6.5. Yeah.
And nothing in fiscal year 14.
Okay, and then I had one more question, and it was about the. I was wondering. It's on page 87. It's this user fee schedule. It doesn't say. I'm just curious what the rate per 1,000 square feet is for small residential and medium residential. It tells what of impervious surface. It tells what it is for large residential and commercial, but not for small and medium.
Because for large residential, it's actually calculated because there's so few of those. So it's similar to non-residential where the impervious area is actually measured. So it's a cost per 1,000 square foot. So it'd be different. Whereas the other ones, it's grouped by a category. So properties are either individual properties aren't measured. They're either categorized as small or medium, and they have that rate for the. So everyone that's in this medium has the same rate of 11 the total of 13.87. But for large residential, it's going to vary based upon how large the residential amount
per
of
1,000 square feet. I see that. Oh, okay, so you don't measure square feet for small and medium.
No, when the utility was developed, it was a sample was taken of different residential properties, and then to represent the entire city, and then the three rate categories were determined, and then properties were categorized as either small or resident or medium, and those all pay the same rate for that category. And then again, the large is actually a measured area for each residential property in that category.
Okay. What's the cutoff point? What do you consider large residential? Like 8,000 square feet, 10,000?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can follow up on that. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. It's right at the. It was staring right at me. It's right in under that bullet 3. It's 3,000 square feet or greater.
Okay,
so towards the top of the page.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry to ask what is probably a less sophisticated question, but I honestly don't know this. We charge stormwater fees and collect them through eWeb. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Do we charge and collect them from officially city residents only, or from all eWeb customers?
Only city residents.
Say again?
Only city residents.
So those folks in River Road and Santa Clara who are county residents but may have an immediate next door neighbor who is a city resident don't pay stormwater fees that their next door neighbors pay?
That's correct.
Interesting. And I should imagine that the systems that aren't immediately on site are connected and the same. Yes?
That's correct.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Evans.
I move to affirm the 2016 stormwater user fee increase of 7.5% implemented by Administrative Order 58-16-08-F.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4. In opposition? 1, 2, 3. It passes.
And Mayor, I'm on the phone.
Oh, I didn't know you were there. And Councilor Tourette, what? How do you want to vote?
Yes.
She votes yes.
She votes yes. Okay, so that's 5-3.
And just again, so we
We'll
will
come
bring
back
back
again.
to the council a written order at a future meeting.
So we're about ready to close up shop. I do want to make comment and congratulations. I think we had a fantastic Olympic track and field event this year in our community. I think we had a very awesome Bach Festival and evidently a pretty darn good, although it's not in Eugene, country fair too. So all good summer things and very successful, and appreciating everybody who spends so much time doing great things for our community. Thank you.